Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for stopping by. Great to see some comments already here. Great to see some people already here. Hope you had a good, debate watching experience. If you watched it, maybe you're just here to hear my views on it and you didn't even watch it. Either way, I think you'll find this informative. Of course, as I already have noted, I'm going to be taking questions. I'm going to be giving a recap. As you can see from my title, I think it's pretty clear. This debate maybe was one of the worst in terms of the blatant structure being so rigged, not just against Bernie Sanders, but against progressive ideology, against democratic socialism, against the left, against good ideas in some ways. And if you looked at the framing, it was all like, Bernie Sanders, how are you going to pay for it? That's not an unfair question. But, there wasn't a question about, how will we pay for the military? There wasn't necessarily a question about how, we pay for, tax cuts. There wasn't necessarily a question about any of these sorts of things. But there was a kind of consistent attack on the left. A lot of right-wing talking points phrased as questions. And I want to read something out. I'm not going to post it on screen because CNN is very litigious about, especially on debate nights, about people posting CNN imagery. But I'm going to read you guys these things. Bear in mind as I'm going to kind of take a look away from the screen. Here are three, banners that they had on screen while Bernie Sanders was talking or while people were talking about Bernie Sanders. I want to read these ones. So, for instance, here's the first one. Warren supports a new trade deal with Mexico and Canada. Why is Sanders' opposition to it wrong? Sanders' proposals would double federal spending over a decade. How will he avoid bankrupting the country? Does Sanders owe voters an explanation of how much his healthcare plan will cost them and the country? So you can see it there in a couple ways. The first one's not necessarily the worst sort of question. You're framing it in a, Bernie Sanders gave his answer. Why do you disagree? That's fair. Bernie got some of those questions. Why do you disagree with Joe Biden on issue X, Y, or Z? But on that particular one, it really did line up. Those last two, it was very much, hey, Bernie Sanders is going to ruin the country. Don't you think he should not ruin the country? And those were just a sample of how this debate was rooted in that. And even Warren got some of it, where she stood up even partially for Medicare for all, when it was just pharmaceutical industry talking points. In some ways, in this debate, Bernie Sanders had 8 opponents. There were the 5 people on stage and the 3 moderators. Those were Bernie Sanders' opponents on that stage tonight. And he won. I felt Bernie Sanders had a great debate. He wasn't perfect. David Dole, just before I came on, David Dole made a great point. He's over at the Rational National. If you like my stuff, you'll like his. Many of you have come to me via David. He made a great point saying Bernie should have taken some time tonight, maybe in his closing statement, to challenge the mythology that only Joe Biden has a edge on electability. Now, when you look at the polling, and I've noted this on my videos, for those of you who aren't from my channel, check out my videos after this. I've noted in multiple videos that Bernie Sanders has very, very good numbers on the electability question. It's not as if Joe Biden is the only one who can win on that front. Bernie Sanders polls very well against Trump. And I think Bernie noted this a little bit when he talked about turnout. But he needs to do more there. Because Biden's overwhelming, edge right now, the thing that's keeping Biden afloat isn't enthusiasm. People don't love Joe Biden. There's no policy that Joe Biden is championing that's got people ready to knock on doors and give over their money and give over their time and give over their energy. Joe Biden is winning because people feel he can beat Trump. Whether it's accurate or not, whether he's the only one or not, that's sort of irrelevant. It's self-perpetuating. It's like a snowball rolling down a hill. Biden can beat Trump. Therefore, we want someone who can beat Trump. Therefore, Biden's the guy. Biden continues to poll well. Maybe it's because he's the guy who can beat Trump. Better line up behind Joe Biden. But again, Bernie Sanders does really well, and more needed to be said tonight, because Bernie has noted this in interviews. But these debates get really high viewership, both live and in terms of who sees the sound bites after the fact. Bernie should have noted very clearly that at the end of the day, Joe Biden's legacy on Social Security cuts, the Iraq War, NAFTA, trade deals, the criminal justice, bankruptcy law, how he's talked about young people, and on and on and on and on. Biden polls well in isolation against Trump, but I don't know if that'll hold up. And I worry about Biden specifically, like Clinton, bombing the turnout test. That it's not that Joe Biden is going to push people to vote for Trump so much, it's that people will not vote at all. Clinton lost overwhelmingly because she couldn't drive turnout. That was the reason. She didn't drive turnout. Some of that was based on GOP, attacks on minority voters. I don't want to discount that. But at the end of the day, Clinton could have won if she had even a smidgen of the enthusiasm that Barack Obama could generate. She couldn't get them to go to the Pokemon goddamn polls. That's why she lost. Joe Biden is just as bad as Hillary Clinton. He's less exciting. Like, whether you think it's a big deal or not, I think it is. But I think a lot of people were excited about the first woman president. I think a lot of people were. Right? Whether you like Clinton or not, right? It's like, what's Joe Biden? He's not even Catholic. Is Joe Biden Catholic? Is it a second Catholic president, maybe? Like, where's the history with Joe Biden? Where's the history? What's the history with Joe Biden? The first man to bite his wife's finger in public, president. Like, I don't know, right? So, Bernie's the guy who drives the turnout. And that's one of the things Bernie could have talked about. Other things of note, Steyer doesn't say the worst things, if I'm being honest. But it's absurd he's on the stage. And I'm not even a big Yang guy. I've had a lot of criticisms of Andrew Yang on this channel, on Twitter, just for a whole bunch of reasons. Think his UBI is really neoliberal, yet it's also too unambitious. If you want a real UBI, set it at $3,000 or $4,000 a month, tax the rich at 100%, and build a socialist society. Then we could talk about, big structural change. But also, his lack of clarity on Medicare for all. But Andrew Yang deserved a spot on that stage way more than Tom Steyer did. Andrew Yang doesn't have the dozens and dozens of millions of dollars to spend on ads to pump up his results in early states. But it's clear that Yang has more of an organic support. And so I think it was really unfortunate that he wasn't on the stage tonight. Look, Yang's not winning this. Klobuchar's not winning this. Steyer's not winning this. Buttigieg probably isn't winning it. Heck, I think Warren's done too. It's Bernie versus Biden. That's my view. But it's like Yang deserved at least one more debate. Probably would have been his last debate, but he deserved it tonight. Klobuchar was awful. She's bragging about how her plan has no ambition. She's like, oh, I got no ambition. Everyone else's plans are really ambitious. All the other Democrats don't support your plan, Bernie Sanders. And all I could think of is like, man, all Klobuchar seems to be doing is like, you're snitching on how terrible so many Democratic senators and congressmen and congresswomen are, that like they don't even back the Warren, modest approach to Medicare for all, let alone Bernie's. And it's like, that's part of the challenge, yes, but it's also an indictment of the Democratic Party as it exists. And it's just another example of why you need a president like Bernie Sanders who will build a movement that's not just about the next 4 to 8 years, but that's about the next 40 to 80 years as you transform society. That a movement that's going to last longer than Bernie Sanders is alive. And he knows that. And that's why he's so engaged with young people and young people's movements. That's why he's doing it. Joe Biden, see, he sort of did what he did last debate, but not to the same extent. Joe Biden in the last debate had his best debate because he didn't talk a lot. And Joe Biden, when he talks a lot, you start to see that he's not great. He's not as sharp as some of the other candidates are on the stage. And his ideas aren't that great, if I'm being honest, right? His ideas aren't that great. And when you add that all together, what you see is that the more he talks, the more his weaknesses, personal and policy, are exposed. But as a front runner, you sort of want to hide in the back, right? Biden's got a decent lead. Some of the polls have Bernie and Biden sort of in a dead heat nationally, but there are still some polls that give Biden a notable lead at the national level. And I kind of feel like Biden's team, maybe Biden himself, but Biden's campaign team is like, look, keep your head down, Joe. At the end of the day, if you don't fumble it, you'll eventually get to the end zone and win this. And maybe that'll happen. But I think that's such a dangerous strategy for Democrats because on the presidential stage, there's no hiding. This isn't Canada. Like, guys know, like here in Canada, for my Canadian viewers, in our prime minister's debates, there's like 6 people on stage, at least in some of them, right? Like every major party and even some of the smaller parties get invited. So there's like 6 people on stage, even in the final debates. So you could sort of hang back in areas. You can keep your head down on a policy you maybe hope you don't get a question on, right? That's the reality, right? And here, Biden thinks he can do that, but my God, that you can't hide from Trump. Trump can't hide from you either, but you can't hide from him. It's 1v1. 1v1 me, bro, but it's for the president instead of bragging rights in a video game, right? Like that, it's real deal stuff. And I don't know if Biden's up for it. So, I mean, at the end of the day, this debate was awful. The questions were awful. The moderators were clearly injecting one of the worst moments. Maybe you guys are mentioning this in the comments. One of the worst moments I've seen in any debate ever was the exchange around Bernie and Warren and the whole, a woman can't be president remark, which I actually don't think ever happened. I made a video on this, a couple videos. Long story short, CNN reports that Liz said that Bernie said that a woman can't be president. Everyone else reports this as truth, citing that CNN report, which actually didn't include any sources in the room. Warren confirms it, Bernie denies it. Then the Washington Post comes out after and confirms Bernie's side of the story by saying that what Bernie said was very clear, that women can be president, that a woman should run against Donald Trump, but that Donald Trump will weaponize sexism against a candidate, and he'll weaponize anything he can against any candidate, and that candidate should be ready for that. And Bernie wasn't saying that to be condescending. As you recall, that was a close, private conversation between 2 friends and colleagues. Bernie was giving advice to Elizabeth Warren because Bernie, unlike Warren, has ran for president, right? He's run for president. So he's giving some advice. And the debate question tonight, again, it's one of the worst things I've seen. It's like, why did you say Elizabeth Warren couldn't win? Why did you say a woman couldn't win? That's what one of the Abby is her name? I don't know what her name. Her name's irrelevant. CNN corporate talking head number 2 on the debate on the moderator table was like, Bernie, why did you say a woman can't win? And Bernie says, well, actually, I never said that. What I said was blah, 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 blah. Basically, the story I gave you. And then she says to Warren, why did Bernie Sanders say you couldn't do that? And it's like she's not engaging with the fact that this is not an undisputed story, that there are more than one arguments here, that there are more than one positions, and that her position, the CNN position, is not the only one. And by portraying it as a fact that Bernie Sanders said this and allowing that to go unchallenged was gross misconduct by CNN. 100%. 100% was that an indication that this was a rigged debate against Bernie Sanders. Because that's a personal issue about a private conversation where there's no real way to prove exactly what happened. You sort of just have to go with Occam's razor and your gut. And the gut in Occam's razor is that the man who's been pushing women to run for president since before most of us were born, since I was 1 year old, because he did it in 88, if not earlier. The man who wanted Warren to run specifically so he didn't have to. We're supposed to believe that man doesn't think a woman can be president. Frig off with that, right? But CNN's like, no, Bernie said that. Bernie said that. Doesn't matter that Bernie is directly refuting it. We're going to move on and stick to the script, which is that Bernie said that. It's awful. Awful, awful, awful. Awful stuff. Let me see. I got a super chat here. Roman, thanks for the donation. I really appreciate it. Klobuchar could say different things every debate and no one would notice. I mean, you're right. Klobuchar, it's weird. Klobuchar's really weird because she is popular with her state. Like when you look at like senators and who's the most popular and the least popular within their own jurisdiction, surprise, surprise, guys, Bernie Sanders, one of the most popular in the country. He's one of the most popular. I think he is. Is he the most popular? I think he is with his constituents. He's very popular. But Klobuchar is as well. But I don't see why. She's incredibly she lacks ambition. She's not really bold. She doesn't strike me as likable. We've all heard about how she treats her workers. Like that story's sort of gone away. But you guys remember that like when she was originally running, like there was all these stories about how Amy Klobuchar was like a real like monster to her staff, right? And we sort of all forgot about that. And it's like, I don't know, man. Like it's one thing to be demanding. It's one thing to be a little bit cold. It's one thing to have high standards and to hold workers to the standards you work to. But it's another to throw shit at them, right? Like, and to mock them and to belittle them. And I'm sure that what we heard was only the tip of the iceberg. We all just forgot about that. So, yeah, Klobuchar, again, I know there's qualifications, and I understand why there are rules to get on these stages. I understand why the rules are both fundraising-based and polling-based. I get that. I really do. But it seems to me that, like, I almost wish you could include a third category, which is, like, is what you say or what you're going to say actually adding to the discourse? So it's like you can be on the stage if you got a shot at winning, obviously. So like Bernie, Warren, Biden, maybe Buttigieg, they got on the stage for that alone. Everybody else, justify why the hell you're there. Like Yang can justify why he's there. He's young. He's racialized. Talks about the UBI. You know, has an interesting perspective. You know? Like, if like Jay Inslee was still in, you could even say that this guy's a singular focus on the environment. The environment matters so much that he needs to be on the stage. But like, what the hell does Amy Klobuchar bring? What is her signature policy? Guys, tell me, what the hell is Amy Klobuchar's signature policy? What is her policy that's like hers and hers alone? Right? Like everybody, if you don't have something that you're championing kind of as your thing, then like, why the hell are you there? Right? Like, Bernie's got like Medicare for all. Warren will say she also supports it, but not really. Bernie's also the only one really backing like the Green New Deal, right? There's a lot of things like that, right? Vote for Daddy, Bernie bitch says, and thank you for the super chat. What a trash debate. Warren is over and desperate. Yeah, I mean, look, Warren gave some good answers on some of the questions tonight. I like her plan for we call them crown corporations in Canada because we still have the Queen as our head of state, but you guys would just call them public corporations. And her idea for a public corporation to manufacture medicine is actually a good idea because, the public can offer a metric even without full nationalization of an industry. You can create a public corporation to compete with monopolies and oligopolies to improve services and to offer something when the profit motive won't. So for instance, you could say that if a company won't manufacture a drug because it's not profitable to do so, then at the end of the day, you might find yourself in a position where the only way to get that drug made is to, fundamentally manufacture it without profit motives, In Canada, what's happened, we used to have in some of the Western provinces before right-wing governments privatized them, was a public bus corporation that took routes that were unprofitable because those routes were necessary for the public good. It's not all about making money. Roa with the super chat says, Klobuchar, I talked past my ad a lot of times. I was actually just going to note that, Ro. Thank you. I mean, look, these debates, like, I'm a little bit here and there going over your time. Totally get it. Look, if I ever run for office, I guarantee you I will be the sort of person that occasionally goes over his time. But it was like every question. It was like every question. And even Biden of all people had a good line where he's like, I still got some time left, but I'm not going to go over like everybody else. Like, my God. It's like, look, why does Klobuchar need extra time? What is she trying to tell? She had like 3 things tonight. 1, I win in red districts. Fine. That has value, I guess. Thanks for letting us know. You're not going to win, but good point. Right? You know what I mean? 2, she's like, I have non-pipe dream policies, which is to say I have no ambition and I have no vision. And 3, it's like, I can, win over Republicans in other parts of the country too. I don't even know her 3 points. It was awful. She tried to like simultaneously piggyback on Bernie Sanders. She's like, oh, Bernie and I work together on this. But when it came to talking about Bernie's actual policies, she was like, Bernie's just a pipe dream guy. None of his policies will ever see the light of day. When it's like, there's real proof that like, there's already people willing to work with Bernie Sanders to get concrete things done. Imagine when he's the goddamn president, right? Vote for Daddy says the fact that she wouldn't shake Bernie's hand. Oh, I didn't see that. Vote for Daddy. I came out right as I don't know if that was at the early part of the debate or at the end, but I kind of hopped on as soon as you guys it ended because I wanted to hop on here. So like I don't know who else. Like Steyer had some good answers. He made some good points. It was interesting that like besides Bernie, Steyer was the only one that offered a real critique of the new NAFTA, which the neoliberals in Canada love. And the neoliberals in the United States love, but the left in both countries has a lot of criticisms from a labor perspective, from consumer perspectives, from sovereignty perspectives, and from environmental perspectives. There's major concerns with the USMCA. And I'm glad to see him take that stand. And it's crazy that a billionaire who's spending like over $100 million of his own money is more progressive on a good many issues than half the stage and more. That's where the Democratic Party candidates are, except for Bernie, right? And kudos to Kamala Harris. I don't know if you guys saw this. Like, we could rip Kamala I'm a cop Harris from here till Sunday. But like, she's voting against the USMCA. Now, whether it's to stave off a left-wing primary challenger or not, we can have that discussion. But she's voting against it because it's too weak on the environment. So, I mean, look, this debate was really disappointing. It was really disappointing. From the structural perspective, it wasn't well structured. I feel like there needs to be more predictability. Not because I don't want the candidates to be on their toes, but because the format to me didn't seem like it led. It seems like it could allow the moderators too much leeway to effectively rig the process by choosing who gets the questions, by choosing who gets to have a response and who doesn't. So sometimes they'll give somebody a chance to respond to a critic, and other times they won't. In some of the Canadian debates, they would have these little mini debates where they would take half the stage, 3 people, and they would all get a chance to answer a question, and then they would all get a second chance to speak on it after everyone else had spoken, right? And like, so it was like, okay, we're carving out a mini debate. It's going to be specifically about the carbon tax. And Jagmeet Singh from the NDP, Justin Trudeau from the Liberals, and Andrew Scheer from the Conservatives are going to talk about it. The Greens and the other parties, you're not in this particular debate. And in the next one, it would include a different group of people. Or they would have a couple people kind of do a little back and forth where it'd be a true debate format where it's like, okay, you speak, the other person gets to respond. Then the first person gets to ask a question of the second person who then finishes it off by responding to that. And by formalizing it like that, what you get to see is that at the end of the day, everyone sort of gets a similar amount of speaking time, which is good to see, but also you have confidence that, like, the moderator can't skew the process as much, right? You know? Yeah, well, exactly. Somebody says, well, only Bernie gets asked by reparations. And those are questions, too. Like these questions, like, of course, everyone gets asked about Iraq. Everyone gets questions about healthcare. The specific questions can be really jigged around, right? But, like, if there's a question on reparations, which is an extremely difficult question to answer, you can sort of rig the process by, say, asking Bernie but not Biden, right? Because if to try to make Bernie look bad, or to try to prevent Biden from looking bad. You can do those sorts of things. Yeah, I mean, so, like, Jared makes a good point. Like, debates are hard to watch in any case. Debates are hard to watch in any case. But this particular one was really bad. The moderating process was not fair. Again, I really do feel that, like, this was a debate designed to rig the process against Bernie Sanders. I really do. I really, really do. It wasn't so much the people on the stage. Like, there was more attacks on Bernie, I guess, because he's surging, and that's fair. Like, the leader should get attacked more. But like, the moderators have a responsibility to ensure an even playing field. And the fact is that CNN is not a neutral body. It's not, right? It's not neutral ideologically, and it's not neutral in terms of who they want to win. Like, lots of people noted this on Twitter, basically being like, hey, I wonder why all of these, like, pharmaceutical, pro-insurance lobby commercials are running during CNN programs all day long, every day, every week. I wonder why they're asking questions that frame Medicare for all as destroying industries. It was like, oh, won't you think of the poor, like, insurance lobby workers and how they'll be put out of work? And it's like, first of all, as Bernie noted, he has contingencies for them. And second of all, while Medicare for all will reduce bureaucracy, it won't eliminate it. You still will need workers to work for the Medicare system, to process payments and to ensure that doctors get paid and to ensure that people get the coverage they need and to examine services as they, for efficiency purposes. You're still going to need, like, white collar medical workers under a public system. You still will need those people. So not all of those people are going to lose a job. But it was an entire framing. It's like, what about all those people that are going to lose their job? Des Moines is an insurance town, right? What if Joe Biden got a question and said, hey, Joe, as a result of your plan, 9 million people will be uninsured. One of the children, little Susie, will lose her daddy tonight because of it. How do you feel about that, Joe? Right? Like, would that be a fair question? And I honestly think, no, I don't think that's fair. Right? Like, I don't think that's fair at all. Even though it's a fair question to ask in a philosophical sense. Like, everyone on the stage who's like, oh, you can't rush things. But it's like, you have to rush things to a certain degree. People are dying. Like, if you started the climate change process 40 years ago, then we wouldn't need to rush. But you sort of need to have more urgency now because we dilly-dallied, right? And it's like, the question is always asked to progressives to the left, how are you going to pay for it? Is the change too extreme? But it's rarely asked to people, what if you do nothing? Is that extreme in the amount of suffering it will cause? Right? And that question isn't asked. That question is not asked. Right? Somebody no matters. That's a great point. These are less debates than they are controlled interrogations. And I'm like, sure, I don't want to be too cynical. There are there were moments in this debate where you got some good back and forth. You did. There were some good questions. There were good questions to Warren about how, she supports universality for university and college, but not childcare. Like, why? Like, I actually think that, both should be universal. But why does she have one but not the other? Like, I'd love to know. The question to Buttigieg, why do you want to cover some public services universally but not others? Like, why? Maybe you have a good argument. He didn't answer that question appropriately from my perspective, but it's a good question to ask. Even Bernie got some good questions about, specific policies. They weren't all unfair, but on the whole, I felt the process wasn't really one designed to do a couple things. One, these debates should primarily be there to help voters better understand their choices. Right? That's the purpose of these debates. The first one is to help people understand their choices. Do you think the way the questions were structured and the way the moderators conducted themselves, that process helped voters understand that? I don't know if it did. Again, I thought Bernie Sanders won, but Bernie Sanders sort of had to play defense in some ways because of the narrative of the debate. Because you only have so much time. So if the question is framed, for instance, Bernie gets a question that's neutrally and appropriately framed. Bernie can then give his narrative. He has the full time to do so. 75 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, whatever. If the question is framed inappropriately, where Bernie Sanders is asked less, hey Bernie, do you think a woman can be president? Versus, hey Bernie, you said a woman couldn't be president. What do you say to that? Where Bernie has to take his time to first correct the misinformation and then give his point. He's already at a disadvantage when the questions are framed like that, right? That's the reality, right? And so those are the ways you can skew these things. They don't give people appropriate information. And when the debates are like this, they also don't help to serve that second objective, which is to help the political party, because this is a party debate, better, work out how it articulates its vision to the people. This doesn't help it either because the debate framing is so narrow. And Elizabeth Warren noted this as well. There were a lot of important things they didn't get to talk about. So when you're not talking about all the important issues, and when you're not talking about the issue, and when the issues you are talking about, you're not talking about them with an open mind, without rigged questions, then you're not actually helping the people understand, you're not informing the public about their choices, and you're not allowing the party to, in a combative but still respectful way, figure out its path forward. You're not allowing that. So this debate, most debates, but this one in particular, failed on both fronts. The PBS debate, there were flaws in that debate, but I thought that was a much better debate. Maybe it's because they had 3 hours instead of 2. Maybe it's because, I'm not saying PBS is without bias, because they get a lot of corporate money at PBS, right? And I've done a video about how PBS has had Bernie blindness and Bernie blackouts, just like the corporate media. But that was a better debate than most of the others. It wasn't great, but the quality was evident in relation. And at the end of the day, I feel like it's such a shame because the American people deserve better, the Democratic Party deserves better, the candidates deserve better than what happened on that stage tonight. Even if you're not a Bernie supporter, I felt like that debate, didn't give you, an appropriate amount of information. And there's a ton of things that we're not talking about. And I don't want to be egotistical, but imagine if the left-wing news YouTubers, the Young Turks, David Dole, Michael Brooks, the Majority Report squad, Mike Figueredo at the Humanist Report, those guys, other people, other left-wing creators. What if we got to host a debate? We would ask different questions, and if we asked the same ones they did, we'd ask them in a different way. And would we be biased? Probably. We probably would be pretty biased. We'd probably fall into some of the same traps. Maybe I would. But the point is that the left, none of these debates are run by left-wing organizations, right? What if Jacobin or Democracy Now or the Young Turks or whatever got to host a debate for the Democratic Party? We've barely got any questions on labor rights. unions get brought up in these things as talking points. Like tonight, it's like, oh, well, the AFL-CIO backs the USMCA. Why don't you, Bernie? Or, they'll use some portion of unions, by no means all unions, saying, we don't like Medicare for all because it'll invalidate our collectively bargained healthcare plans. What do you say to that, Bernie? And they'll use unions as a sort of like cudgel against people. Like, oh, will you kill union jobs with your Green New Deal? Or will you kill union insurance plans? And on and on and on. But like, there's been no questions about, like the right, unless, correct me if I'm wrong. Like, Bernie Sanders wants to ban right to work, and he'd be a goddamn hero for doing so. Like, that would be one of the, like, besides Medicare for all, that might be the biggest thing Bernie Sanders could do. Really. Like, one of the reasons America sucks for workers, the biggest reason is the Taft-Hartley Act in the 1940s. If you get rid of that, American labor standards will spike everywhere. You'll de-incentivize, like, the outsourcing of jobs from union states to non-union states. It'll help workers here in Canada, because jobs in Canada, they're not just shipped to developing countries. Auto worker jobs in Canada go to goddamn Alabama because they don't allow unions there to form as easily, and the workers make, $16, $17 an hour at an auto factory. They make much more than that in other states because the workers have unions to protect them. They have better health and safety standards, better benefits, better job protection, and on and on and on. And it's like, if Bernie could get rid of right to work, it'd be a major change. And there's no questions about labor policy. This party is supposed to be the party of labor. But like, where are the questions about health and safety legislation? Where are the questions about, we've had some questions about minimum wages, to be fair. We've had some questions about, the fight for 15. Like, I don't want to obscure that. But like, we haven't gotten questions about like unions as much. And the reason is that if you ask a question about expanding unions, it doesn't help the right. Not in this context. Because the right-wingers will be forced to say that they actually really kind of support right to work because they don't give a damn about unions. They don't. Like, they really don't. Or it gives weight to people like Bernie Sanders, who can come out and clearly say, my goal is to get every American worker into a union. Specifically, he says, I want to double the unionization rate in this country. And through policy and things like that, to make it easier for workers to join a union. And, and it would just allow Bernie to hammer his point home, and so they don't do that. So unions are only brought up as an object and not an actual discussion point here, right? Like, that's not something we talk about. Not something we talk about. So, yeah, right to work is a sleazy term. Yeah, 100%, 100%. But like, it's the term that people use, right? Bernie has said, I'm going to ban right to work. And Bernie's done this stuff. Bernie's got detailed policies. There's been some, earlier on, there were some questions in some town halls, I believe, about should prisoners have the right to vote? My answer is yes. Here in Canada, every single person above the age of 18 who's a citizen gets to vote, with the exception of two people, the chief electoral officer and the deputy electoral officer. They're the only two people that don't get to vote in a given election. Our most heinous criminals, we don't have the death penalty in Canada, but we have like a few criminals who, we don't really do life without parole in Canada. Everyone technically can get parole, but there are some particularly heinous criminals, like Paul Bernardo. If you look him up, you'll see who he is. He's truly a monster, who are basically in jail for life. And they can vote in Canada. So it's not just people who get out of jail who get to vote. Every Canadian citizen, no matter what they've done, gets a right to vote. Bernie Sanders is right to champion that. But we didn't really get a lot of questions about criminal justice. No questions about prison labor. No real discussion about how Kamala Harris, when she was still in this, allowed, allowed quasi-slave labor to fight fires in California. And then those very same prison firefighters, when they got out of jail, well, guess what? Can't be firefighters. They got a criminal record. They literally have the experience making like $1 or $2 an hour to fight fires. Couldn't get jobs as firefighters. Kamala Harris, being the Attorney General, she can't really fix the second thing as much because I think that's probably a labor policy, but she certainly could have demanded better wages for these workers. Right? So at the end of the day, it's like we don't get these questions. We don't get them. Oh yeah, Vaudrey, we're not going to have a debate about like Homolka versus Bernardo, who was worst. My point is that both of them are Canadian citizens and they should have the right to vote. And that's a debate in the States that's happening, but you wouldn't necessarily know it because it's not happening on the stages. I don't know. So I know there's been some I know there's probably been some questions. Well, Samantha Sider makes a point here. She says, the media largely cares about police and firefighters unions. That's true. But, you could still see that unions play a major role, right? The flight attendants union was the reason the Trump shutdown ended. I know it wasn't the only reason, but that was, the turning point. Yeah, Vahab, yes, that's who we're talking about. That's the person. It's a very famous case. You can go look it up. I'm not going to talk about it here because it's a bit off topic and also super demonetizable, I'm guessing. So I'm going to steer clear of that one. But that's my point. If you guys have some questions, I know there was probably some. Normally, I don't have streams this crazy active. I'm very happy to see it. But it means that I just had to kind of focus. So if you do have some questions, ask them. I appreciate super chats. They really help the channel grow and develop. Helps me invest in the channel. But as much as I can, I try to answer non-super chat questions as well. Because, being a channel this size, one of the benefits is that I can at least try to answer those questions. Vaudrey, I don't know if Conrad, if he's a citizen there, I don't know, actually. That's a good question. He's been pardoned, right? I don't know if pardoned. It depends on the state, Vaudrey. I know that there are some states where as soon as you get out of jail, you can vote. Pardoned or not. There are some where you need to be pardoned. There are some where I don't know if it's a life thing. There are even 1 or 2 states, I think, where you can vote even from prison, but those are the exception. Mailed Horseman said the CNN panelist's follow-up question to Warren, which implies her claim is true, completely ignoring Bernie's response. Yeah, I don't know if you were here, Mailed, but we talked about that specific question. There was a lot of bad things tonight, but that was one of the worst, I have to say. One of the worst questions I've seen. And it was a real confirmation about how the process was rigged, about how they had a narrative they wanted to get to, regardless of the facts, right? That was the truth. Because again, I noted this earlier for maybe those who came in late, Bernie, and I've noted this on my videos. Go check them out. Bernie Sanders said, somebody said that Liz said that Bernie said, so you can already see we're playing the telephone game, that Liz Warren couldn't be president, a woman couldn't win in 2020. And then Bernie says, no, I didn't say that. What I said was Trump would use sexism against a woman candidate. It would be challenging, but she could still do it, and I would support her. Blah, 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 blah. Warren then says, actually, he did say I couldn't win. And then later on, the Washington Post confirms what Bernie said. To be the most charitable we can to Warren. It's an unconfirmable story. I think she lied. But let's just say we don't know what happened. In that case, the question framing is unjust. It would have to be, there are reports that you said this. Let's clarify what you said and what you mean today. That would be a fairer framing. Because it is news. It's fair to ask a question about that story because undeniably that was a major story. Right? If you look here on YouTube, big story in the news. But the framing was biased as all hell. And I get it. It was a CNN story and this is a CNN debate. But fundamentally, there's no more credibility there. Paul Cooper with the super chat. Keep up the good analysis. Paul, thanks so much. I'm doing my best, and I'll continue to give my coverage of these stories. Vahab, I did not see that yet. I've been on the debate. Somebody told me that Klobuchar didn't shake Bernie's hand. Maybe. I'm not sure. Yeah, no matters. That's really interesting. I mean, Bernie's been doing some of that stuff, calling out Biden on his right-wing policies, and rightfully so, specifically on how they're gonna demotivate progressive voters and infrequent voters from coming out in a general election. But you're right that, like, Biden didn't get a question on, like, hey, Mr. Biden, Vice President Biden, do you still think that we should cut Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security? Do you still agree with Paul Ryan that you want to cut these things? He didn't get that question. He didn't get that question at all. And we know why. CNN is doing one of their 5 fitters of media flack. Five filters of media flack. Yeah. I was trying to find a link to watch the replay of the debate and ended up here. Great to see you here. I appreciate it. I must have picked the right keywords. Vahab says, why does Conrad Beck get to be a political analyst? Because we live in hell. Because we live in hell. And because, like, he's famous. We have, like, the Canadian media is skews right wing. He used to, like, own a newspaper. You know, it makes sense, right? Some people get to be political analysts because they know things. Some people get to be political analysts because they're misanthropes who have money and influence. Mulrooney, Vaudrey says Mulrooney would vote for Trump if he could, even saying when Irish eyes are smiling for Trump. Yeah, I mean, yeah, probably. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if it's Trump versus Biden, I don't know who Mulrooney would vote for. But I wouldn't be shocked if he voted for Trump. Samantha says, is it just me or is Biden even worse at articulating his thoughts as usual? Samantha, I would sort of agree. Trump tonight, or excuse me, Biden tonight sort of kept his head down. Early on, he was pretty sharp, but towards the end, he looked a little weared out. I don't know if he's just tired. I don't know if, like, by the end of it, he was just, he didn't have the stamina. I'm not sure. But I definitely noticed towards the end, he was struggling a little bit. I don't know if there's anything there, but I noticed that too. Jared asks, Christo, I'm interested in how the media sets the narrative through these questions and in many ways steals the narrative. Yeah, I mean, look, that's how you do it. Like, you set the narrative through the questions. So, again, it's not just, so you set the narrative by what kind of topics get discussed and don't get discussed. So you only discuss topics that you feel you can sway to your direction. You don't talk about homelessness because talking about homelessness can't help the right wing. It can't, right? It can't do it because, like, the only solution that doesn't make you look like a monster is massive public investment to solve homelessness, right? So there's not a question on homelessness. Again, there's no question on unions, like detailed questions on unions. How will you allow, like, for instance, again, this could be a skewed question from a neutral perspective. You could say, hey, how would you increase unionization in this country? That question is rooted in the assumption that increased unionization is good. Now, increased unionization is good, but another person might say that's a biased question. So when you ask a question like, hey, Bernie Sanders, how can you prove to us you won't bankrupt the country? Well, then you skew it through that way. So you skew it by how you talk about the unavoidable issues, bringing up insurance, lobby talking points, always asking how you're going to pay for progressive things, never regressive things, not giving tough questions to the candidates you want to do well. But then when there are issues that you can't stump your opponents on, and by opponents I mean you're the moderators, and your opponents are a particular ideology or a particular candidate that espouses that ideology, then you ignore the topic, which again is why we do not get questions on workers' rights. We don't get questions on, like, Republican debates. Here's a good one. Republican debates will often have a question, or even Democrats will be asked. America spends so much money. Name one public service you will cut. Name one public service you'll cut. Name a federal department you'll eliminate or merge. Like, name a bureaucracy you'll destroy. No, none of those questions are ever, but what about the workers that'll lose their jobs? What about a decline of public services that Americans need? You won't hear shit about that. You won't. But you'll hear it till the end of the day as, oh, government waste. You do not get questions in the Democratic or Republican debates or in the presidential debates. We need more public services in this country. Name me an industry you'll nationalize. Name me an industry you'll nationalize. Here's 3 industries: telecom, pharmaceuticals, energy. Nationalize one of the 3. Tell me which one and why. You don't get those questions because the framing by default does not serve the industrial interests of like the neoliberals. It doesn't, right? That's the point. Yeah. Oh, Patrick, yeah. Stayer's answers here again, and some of the topics he was in the top half. Like in some of the topics, the only person that gave better answers on some of them was Bernie. Like I don't know enough about him really to make a judgment, but like you're right. If Bernie was doing what he was doing, like if Bernie was a billionaire who was spending hundreds of his millions of his own dollars to do this, I would still call him out. I think that super PAC should be banned. Like, our system here in Canada is imperfect. We still have third-party spending, but it's not to nearly the same extent. We have stricter donation limits on our federal campaigns, and third-party spending is more regulated than it is in the States. Our system isn't perfect. The parties of the rich people, the liberal and conservative parties, still have way more money than the working class people's party, like the NDP. The NDP, the party of the working class, the Democratic Socialist Party. But like, billionaires don't influence the process as directly and as heavily as they do in the States. Whether it's Bloomberg or Adelson or the Koch brother, but these people have a much bigger influence than the billionaires in Canada. Oh, Warren didn't shake Bernie's hand. Oh, wow. That's really interesting. I didn't see that. It's really interesting. Yeah, bicycles, I mean, you're right. Like, look, sometimes things aren't fully... sometimes things are more complex. On some of these channels, on some of these narratives, every once in a while, you get a good show, you get a good topic. Like, the Toronto Star, for instance, is a neoliberal newspaper. It's seen as Canada's left-wing newspaper, but it really isn't. But there are still good journalists at that newspaper who, in an isolated sense, do good work. So it's never quite as simple as to say every journalist at CNN is bad, but it is to say that you're right, that on a material sense, there is a limit to how you can challenge the political and social and economic status quo when you work to organizations that support the status quo, or if they don't support the status quo, it's because they want to make things worse for workers and the poor and the marginalized. Yeah, no matters. Yeah, Biden leads with older voters. Attack his strength already. Yeah, you're right. But Biden is strong with older voters, so you could attack him on how he wants to cut those Social Security programs. Biden is strong with black voters, so you can attack him with the fact that Biden was part of that movement in the early 1990s and beyond that basically criminalized black people on a global, on a historic scale. Biden is strong on the electability question. I noted this early. Let people know that Biden, like Clinton, will fail to energize and mobilize the people you need to win a presidential election. Warren is Mean Girls level petty right now. Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen it. As soon as I'm done, I'm going to check it out, see what happened. But people are telling me, guys, for those who didn't see it, that Elizabeth Warren didn't shake Bernie Sanders' hand. I'm still here. Okay, I'm seeing it right now.
We'll hear the Democratic candidates all on stage together,
Okay.
hearing them debate before the first votes are cast.
So, okay. Okay, that does look pretty bad. So I just looked at it. It does look. I'm gonna turn the sound off because again I want CNN copyright striking me because I'm playing a video on YouTube. Here, but I mean the body language looks really bad, and Steyer I feel bad for him because he's sort of just hanging out there on the side, and so she comes up and it does look like she's like chewing him out. I don't know. Does anybody get a sense for what she said? I can't hear it over Anderson Cooper. Is there like anybody who like lip read or something? Let me know in the comments when I get to them. Megan Fishel, I mean, I certainly understand your perspective that you don't want to be told what to think. I mean, this is a debate recap where I'm giving my perspective. Of course, I don't have the only perspective or even necessarily the best one. I'm not exactly sure where you can find the debate. If you're an American, I assume that you can probably watch it on like the CNN website. Maybe you can get it there. If you're not American, it might be hard to get it on the website because often they geo-restrict it. If it's on TV, you might get a replay later tonight. If somebody knows, I don't think you can post links in the comments here, but if somebody knows where you can watch it, maybe describe it for people in the chat and they can look it up. We have Comrade Internet, we live in hell, yeah. Could somebody make a killing with left-wing news site in Canada? Yeah, I mean, we do have left-wing news in Canada. We do, right? Like, we have the Ricochet, we have, rank and file from a labor perspective, we have Briar Patch, we have the T, we have Straight, we have left-wing news in this country. It's just none of them have been able to kind of gain any sort of hegemony and a significant amount of resources. So there's nothing like the Rebel. There's nothing like the Rebel on the left in Canada that can basically run a news organization. And I wonder if if Ricochet would get a crowdfunding influx, could they start producing their own news show? Maybe. Like what Ricochet does is partner with people who do a lot of podcasts. So, and my YouTube videos, they share my videos, Alberta Advantage, 49th Parahell, and many, many others, all sort of get shared through Ricochet. Ricochet also has its own, series of podcasts. But we have nothing like the Young Turks in Canada. Like David Dole and I make videos, but we're like individuals. There's nothing like a Young Turks or a Majority Report in Canada. And I think part of it is scale. Is there a big enough audience for a largely focused Canadian show to support a whole team of people? Creators, technical staff, webs, like all the audio visual infrastructure. I just do this with one light, a good microphone, and a decent webcam, and basic editing software. Imagine if I had to have like a truly professional setup for 4 people, like on camera, and then double that behind the camera. Like there's not that scale in Canada right now. Even back when he was running against Clinton, HRC, the Clinton was trying to paint Bernie as a misogynist. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's true. The Bernie bro meme, even though Bernie Sanders does exceptionally well with women, especially young women, that meme persists. Comrade Internet, you need an emergency party kit for when Mulrooney kicks it. Maybe also one for Chrétien as well in some ways. I don't think we're ever going to have that moment. When like Thatcher passed away in England, like there were legit parties. I don't think any politician in Canada is as hated as Margaret Thatcher. Not even Stephen Harper, right? Like I don't know if that's going to happen in Canada. Plus, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, Samantha, I'm not sure. But yeah, Bernie, if you read Bernie's labor plan, it basically includes something like card check. TV2 Media says, what up? Hey, what's up to you? Great to have you here. Thanks for stopping by. Michelle Rempel is more of a feminist than HRC. I mean, Michelle Rempel is, yeah, like you said, isn't really a well, I mean, it's tricky, right? Michelle Rempel, I don't know. Is she a feminist? I look, I'm not an expert from a scholarly perspective, and I'm not a woman. I'm not going to make a declaration tonight whether or not Michelle Rempel is a feminist, but I'm not sure. You could ask. Maybe Michelle Rempel. Michelle Rempel has a YouTube channel. Maybe she makes a video about feminism. I don't know. Will TV2 Media have 2 books on Trudeau? Well, for those who don't know me, these are my books. I have a PhD in Canadian history from Queen's University. And I wrote my dissertation on Pierre Trudeau and his ties to unions and the left in Canada. And my dissertation, which is a book on Trudeau, it's on the shelf here. It's called The Constant Liberal. You can pick it up on Amazon, or because Amazon is not great, you can buy it directly from UBC Press. You can find, it's a left-wing criticism of Trudeau. So my books on Trudeau back here are in no way an endorsement of Trudeau, but are rather a, example that when you write a thesis about somebody and a book about somebody, you need to basically read almost everything written about them. And so I have a good many Trudeau books behind me. Some of them critical of him, some of them, positive of him. Yeah, card check would be incredible. Like Samantha, when I said that maybe besides right to work, or besides Medicare for all, maybe fighting anti-union policies could be Bernie's greatest legacy if he gets to be president. Yeah, I don't know. Hillary Clinton seems more petty. Let's remember, Hillary Clinton still blames Bernie Sanders for her loss, even though more Bernie voters voted for her than her voters voted for Obama. Bernie Sanders held dozens and dozens of events for her, and she held less events for Obama back in 2008. Like, Bernie Sanders worked his ass off for her. Even like MSNBC, like Rachel Maddow did a really interesting segment that gets shared around every now and then, where she basically outlines, like, from an objective perspective, Bernie Sanders worked really hard for Hillary Clinton. Worked extremely hard for her, right? She didn't necessarily, she even wrote him a letter. Bernie Sanders is like, I have a letter from Hillary, like, thanking me personally for the hard work I've done in helping her win this election. Now, of course, she didn't win, but none of that's Bernie's fault. If anything, without Bernie, she would have lost harder. Scott Duvall on Sears pensions. Yeah, Scott Duvall's been great as a NDP MP. That's another thing. No talks about pensions. No talks about, like, saving workers' pensions. Like, workers that have lost their pensions in the United States. Where are the questions on those? Where are the questions on reforming bankruptcy law to put pensions before CEO golden parachutes? You don't get those questions on these debate stages. Maximilian says, hi gamers. Hey, how's it going? Gamers unite, but not in the alt-right way, just because we all like games. Yeah, they're trying raw material to make Bernie look like a sexist. I don't think it's going to work. It seems like tonight he got good applause for his response to that comment. It seems like people don't like it. And in addition to the videos I made, it should be remembered that earlier today there was a report coming out that Warren is telling her people to quote unquote de-escalate on that issue, right? Which is to say that maybe they either know she got caught in a lie and are trying to backpedal, or that the story is not going well for them, and so they want to jettison the story. Maybe a bit of both. Yeah, Samantha, like, yeah, you're right about Bloomberg. People need to understand. Like, people say, oh, Trump's a billionaire, Trump isn't. I don't care. But, like, let's say Trump is a billionaire. He's got a couple $1 billion. There are, like, $1 million is a ton of money. $1 billion is an ungodly amount of money. Bloomberg has what, 56 billion? It's north of 50. He could spend 10% of his wealth, just 10. And he could spend, and that's many multiples what an entire presidential election spends. Like, his wealth is absolutely obscene, right? His wealth is absolutely obscene. It gives you a perspective that even U.S. presidential politics, which are incredibly expensive, are chump change to billionaires. Like Jeff Bezos could fund dozens of elections just on his own if he wanted to. It gives you a perspective of how rich some people are. Okay, Ray, yeah. See, Ray, the clip I saw, Ray, was that Warren, like, I'm seeing it here, she kind of comes up to Bernie and she's like, short of chewing him out. Like, the way she's talking to him is not like a friendly kind of like, hey, good debate, how's the family type kind of thing. It was like, she was kind of like chewing him out. And Bernie seems to be sort of like, bro, lay off. Like, I don't know. It seems, it's, the body language from that doesn't look good to me. Yeah, raw material. See, I didn't know this. If you guys don't know, after Warren broke that story and everyone kind of knew it was BS, there was the refund Warren hashtag, which was basically people getting refunds from Warren. And of course, to get a refund from Warren, you had to donate to her. Some people said it was just Bernie people trolling, but it's like Bernie supporters can't get refunds unless they've donated to Warren at some point, right? And so people got refunds. I didn't know they crashed the site, though. And I did see Women for Bernie trending. I did see that. If you guys go to that one, hashtag Women for Bernie. Women for Bernie is a lot of great stories from famous women and regular women, young and old, from all walks of life, talking about why they support Bernie Sanders. And it's a really great reminder that Bernie Sanders has a diverse, strong working class coalition, and that the Bernie bro myth, which, still persists on the internet at least, is 100% BS. 100% BS. Well, exactly, just me. Like, Bernie tried to get her to run. So it's like, both in general, Bernie thinks a woman could win, but he thought this woman specifically could have won. It's absurd to me. It's absurd. And at first I was like, look, maybe this was miscommunication, I thought. I said, maybe Bernie said what he said and Warren heard it differently. No one's perfect. Sometimes we hear things differently. Sometimes you say something and people hear it differently from the way you said it. But then I'm like, okay, if that's true, Bernie and Warren are friends. Warren would have cleared that up with Bernie before she went to the media. And that's what led me to believe that she was lying. Because Bernie would not clearly say what that. Bernie at the worst would say something and it would be misinterpreted in a good faith way. But that Warren would have definitely not gone out and attacked a friend like that if she was telling the truth. And she's not. She's lying. Sachin says, I was reading your book. Super dope. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I'm glad you liked it. Academic books are a ton of work. And they don't always get read by a ton of people outside of academia. So it's always really great to hear people that have read the book, right? Like, the nature of academic books is they're not published for broad audiences, both in the amount of and how the books are sold, but also the way the books are written. Although mine, I think I'd like to say, is a little bit more accessible than a lot of academic books. It's still rigorous. I'd like to think so anyway. But I tried to write it in a way that was just a better and an easier read for people who aren't professional historians. Cloud said, my only concern about Medicare for all, it's not that we don't have the money for it, but that it would be a ridiculous, my only concern is that we don't have the doctors, nurses, and hospitals for it. I mean, I'm not sure about that. The United States spends tons of money on healthcare. I don't necessarily think that's the case. In some cases, you might find conglomeration of services. The United States actually does have a lot of doctors and nurses in healthcare. I think the issue is that it's not always accessible to people. Medicare for all might better allocate those resources. And it should also be noted that with free university, you might get more nurses. You might get more doctors in that sense. You might get more healthcare professionals in that sense, more EMTs in that sense, because people who are qualified for that kind of work, they have the aptitude for it and the desire to do it, but then didn't have the money to do it. Now the money thing is solved. Now that there's a new nurse that could have never been before, but now they can be because they have the resources, right? So I wouldn't worry too much about that. I wouldn't worry too much about that at all. I don't think that'll be a major issue. Okay, yeah, see, I didn't see a handshake. I mean, regardless, it looked really awkward. But look, you're right. If I'm going to be completely honest with you, like Cloud, I mean, that's a challenge in certain communities in Canada. There are doctor shortages, but that's not so much related to private versus public. It's just a matter of doctors are difficult to train. It takes a while to train them. And I will say in Canada, our universities are not free. Our universities are all have tuition. And medical school especially has a ton of tuition. So a lot of people who maybe could become doctors for whatever reason maybe don't want to absorb the risk in debt. But what happens in Canada is that a lot of doctors don't want to live in small towns on the edge of the country. And so there are doctor shortages. But that's not related to the public versus private. That's related to getting more doctors trained. So that's not a Medicare for all issue. That would more be an issue of ensuring that you have sufficient slots in medical schools. So that would be investing in medical schools across the country, incentivizing doctors and nurses to go to communities where there are shortages. And I mean, private systems have the same issue. But that is a concern. That is a concern. Yeah, Vaudrey, press progress is really good, but they don't produce video content. I've talked to them about it, doing a podcast or something, but they say basically they have limited resources. Evlon says, what's up in here? We're talking the debate. Right now, there's the whole handshake gate where Warren didn't shake Bernie's hand and looked to chew him out. I'm not exactly sure what happened with that, but it didn't look good from my perspective. Warren, I don't know what she was saying or what she was trying to communicate, but it didn't look good at all to me. After this, I'm going to certainly have to read into this. Oh yeah, Philip, you're right. Justin certainly is unpopular right now. Very unpopular right now. So is Andrew Scheer on his way out. Well, it's not just conservatives that don't like Justin Trudeau, to be fair. Justin Trudeau is very unpopular. He's got negative popularity rates. Conservatives probably like him least of all, but Justin Trudeau's not popular. Sam, I don't know if I can find it, but if you look up if Bernie Sanders, Labor policy, Labor platform. If you Google Bernie Sanders Labor platform, it's if you just Google that, it should come up. It's called the Workplace Democracy Plan. It's a real good plan. Certainly read it. It's not just about like better labor legislation. It includes like workers' positions on corporate boards. Super good. Super good. No, Jared, for sure, 100%. I totally get you. It's a mixture of like hate versus dislike. I mean, Justin Trudeau's approval rating is solidly in the negatives. It's risen a little bit since the election, but the only major party leader right now with a positive rating is Singh. Blanchet is popular in Quebec, and Quebec's the only part of the province that can vote for him because they only contest seats in Quebec, but he's unpopular nationally. Right? It doesn't matter again because people in Saskatchewan don't get to vote in Quebec ridings. But Bernie Tulsi for the win. I don't know if Bernie's going to pick Tulsi for his vice president. I think Bernie will pick somebody younger, likely racialized, likely a woman, but it won't be Tulsi, I don't think. I don't know if that's going to be the move. A lot of people are saying Nina Turner. I think that's a great pick, but I don't know if that'll happen, but we'll see. Almighty huge. I just came here to say that CNN is effing trash. Look, that's like, you read my title. That's what my title basically says, right? It's trash. Yep. That debate was trash. Jared says my comment was too long and it won't post. That sucks. Sorry about that, man. Look, I've made some criticisms of Yang. You guys can check my videos. I mentioned it earlier here. Whenever I make a video on Yang, I get a ton of Yang people coming in. Some of those videos have like 60% dislike ratios. So I've made my views clear on Yang. On the not left, not right, but forward slogan, which I don't like. On his and on his position on Medicare for all, which I feel is misleading people. But I'm not going to give it. And I said earlier today, I don't even like Andrew Yang's policies. He seems like a nice guy personally, but like I felt he should have been on the stage tonight because he brings something to the discussion. He's relatively young. He's racialized. He's talking about policies in a way no one else on the stage is. There's a merit to having him on the stage. I mean, the Yang Gang certainly is young, but I mean, the Bernie Sanders supporters are also very young. Alan says $1 billion is $1,000 million. You're right. That's a great way of putting it. To put it in perspective, right? Like $1 million is $1,000, so $1 billion is $1,001 million. And that gives it perspective. If you make $50,000 a year after taxes, it'll take you 20 years to earn $1 million, right? And obviously you can't save all of that. Even after taxes, you got to pay for your housing, your food, basic expenses, all of those sorts of things, right? So you put in perspective, how long would it take an average person? 50,000's maybe even a little, especially after taxes, is a higher than average income. How long would it take you to earn $1 billion? Well, it would take you many lifetimes. Rhea says, I'm honestly disappointed they had 4 years to bring their A game, and this is what they give us. Yeah, I can see that. Warren canceled officially. Look, I'm moving strongly in that direction. Yeah, I liked Elizabeth Warren, guys. I did. I stood up for Elizabeth Warren when a lot of other progressives wouldn't, because she's got good ideas. She really does. Wealth tax, good idea. Again, they're not as good as Bernie's, but like, my goodness, they're still good. The wealth tax, the pharmaceutical company, there's good policies there, and so like give her a chance. But then the lie about the Bernie thing, and I have to look more into it, but the not shaking the hand thing, it's too much. It's too much. Mad Crazy says, new here. This guy is solid. Good addition to my indie news circulation. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. If you like what you're seeing here and you're new, click subscribe, click the bell. I make lots of content, pretty much a video every day on Canadian politics, U.S. politics. Sometimes I do videos that are like, they're political, but they're not about electoral politics. I might make videos about inequality or things like that. Occasionally, I've made videos about The Simpsons. So I have a bit of a variety channel, but it's mostly a news and politics channel from a left perspective. So if you like it, stick around, as the channel continues to grow and develop. And I do these streams every Wednesday night. I do streams for debates and things like that, but I also have a weekly live stream that I do every Wednesday night. Bernie was the one who talked about all of these things before he was running for president, but not just that. And I've noted this before, guys, like Bernie Sanders took a lot of the positions he has now before it was politically advantageous to have that position. Bernie Sanders didn't need to evolve on like LGBTQ rights. He was always there. Bernie Sanders, and when Bernie Sanders was going to pride parades and standing up for people with HIV and all those sorts of things, like, that was a liability. He lost votes because of that, maybe more than he gained from taking those stands. Now, in a national race, you likely gain votes when you take a lot of these stands. But back then, you didn't. So you know that when Bernie took those stands, he wasn't doing it for the votes. He wasn't doing it for the donations or whatever. He was doing it because he believed in it and because he saw people suffering and he saw no one standing for those people. So he did his duty as an elected official and represented his constituents and the people who needed the most support. And so, look, Bernie, is he 100% right all the time? No. But you damn well know that, like, even when Bernie's wrong, he's wrong for the right reasons. Warren who? Yeah, I mean, look, we're getting there. Yeah, 130. This is pretty good. We got some really, in terms of viewership, this is near the high point of my live streams, really. During the Canadian election, we got near this point. We like during the federal election, when we were covering the debates, after the debates, we would get, 120, 130. My weekly live streams would get this high too, as a lot more people were focused in. But, hitting 150 on a stream, I think that's the record for this channel. TB2, this isn't my first stream. I've been streaming for a little bit. I stream for debates, and I stream every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. But this is the biggest stream I think I've done. Why did Vince? I don't know why he didn't shake the hand. I don't know. Maybe people know, but I don't know. Yeah, TB2. In terms of streams, there's whole conflicting information. Some YouTube people have said that it's good to stream, but if you leave up the streams as videos, it can hurt your channel algorithmically, because streams after the fact don't get the sort of views that videos do. So I unlist them, but if you're a subscriber and you've clicked the bell, you should get a notification, and then you can go watch it later. And if you follow me on social media, it's just my name, at Christo Avalis, and you're like, hey, I missed a live stream. Can I have the link? I can send it to you. Because I don't delete them. I just unlist them, because apparently that's better algorithmically. And actually, after I started doing that, I did notice a small uptick in views, because I think that they weren't dragging down my average click-through rate. So I do stream at least once a week on this channel. Trump is the responsible vote after tonight. Well, I don't agree with that, Reedy. I don't agree with that at all. I mean, can Trump win? Certainly Trump can win. The swing states are similar. The one question is going to be how much have the Democrats grown in some of the states with large Hispanic populations? Is Texas as competitive as some people think it might be? That might change. But if that hasn't, the swing states are the same. It's like Florida, Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, like those are the swing states. That's where it is. The Democrats can win, like if they can win Florida, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. I don't even know if they need to win all of those. But if they can win most of those states back, they'll win. Like they'll win the election. Like that's how that's going to go. The question is, will they, right? So those are still the swing states for now. But if Texas, because of the growing like white collar professional population there, which is maybe not Democrat, but not as hardcore Republican, maybe they become more of a swing voter population, along with growing Hispanic populations. If Texas becomes a purple state, then the electoral map will change, right? If Texas becomes even a state the Democrats can occasionally win, then the type of swing states change. Because you figure if the Democrats could win Texas, then they don't ever really need Florida. Because Texas is a bigger state, right? So the swing states will change with history. But I'm not sure if this election is going to be a change in swing states. Any feels on Yang? I mean, look, I've been critical of Yang. Specifically, I feel his basic income needs to be more ambitious. Make it $4,000 a month, $3,000 a month. Really, if you want a basic income that's really a freedom dividend, because wealth is collectively produced, and because the CEO doesn't get their work done without all the people who clean and feed them and do all of the infrastructural work to allow them to earn their money. If you want a freedom dividend, it should basically be the instantiation of a full system of equality. So what's the GDP of a society? You can't give all of that away because you need to produce more goods, and not all wealth is liquid, but you should use a basic income to effectively create a society that eliminates inequality. 1K bro is not a basic income. It's not. The basic income needs to be set at a level that in the richest cities in the country, a person can live off them. What is it going to take for a single person to live in San Francisco? That's what the basic income should be. Cover their rent, cover their food, cover small luxuries even. Until it's that, it's not a basic income. Not from my perspective. I also think Yang is lying about his support for Medicare for All. He says he supports it. He doesn't. He barely supports a single-payer system. And I don't like his not left, not right, but forward. Because when I hear that, when I see that, what I hear is, on the left, you have people who want to guarantee healthcare for everybody. And on the right, you have people who want to ban Muslims from this country. They're both equally wrong. We got to go right down the middle. That's what I hear from Andrew Yang. And I don't like it. I don't like it. So I'm not a fan of Yang. I'm not. But again, as I noted, he deserved to be on the stage tonight. Because like him or like his policies or not, he's bringing actual debate. And if the goal of a debate is to actually like bring new ideas and give people an informed choice, then he deserved to be on that stage much more than Klobuchar or Steyer. That's my view. None of your business says, I would love to hear your program about the college process in America. Over credentializing and nepotism is running rampant. You can't get a position teaching without knowing someone. I mean, look, in Canada, I don't know what it's like in the States for teaching. In the States, it's really uneven, isn't it? Because in certain states, they can't keep teachers because they're really crappily paid. And in others, it's got to be competitive because the teachers make good money. In Canada, there are similar issues with certain professions. To a certain degree, credentialism is an issue. It is. I don't know what the solution is, whether it's a free, more streaming. But then again, the problem with streaming is that you lead with class inequalities. You lead with people who get streamed out of an academic path, even though maybe they're late bloomers. You stream a potential, historian or physician or physicist out in grade 8 because they didn't do well on their grade 8 exam when, they're the kind of person that blossoms in their early teens, mid-teens. So I don't know what the solution is. But yeah, certainly in a lot of places in Canada, like for teaching in Canada, there is that issue that unless you're willing to go to more rural areas or like the far north, or you have like a specific teachable subject. So for instance, if you can teach French in a province like Ontario, there's always a need for French teachers, because it's very difficult to have a high level of French proficiency and teach French, especially if you're not born as a francophone. So that those jobs are hard to get, but it's very hard to get teaching positions. And in academia, you don't need to hear it from me. Getting a job in academia in Canada and the States is borderline impossible to get a job as a professor, a full-time job. Valdre says, Christo, I'm not in Toronto. I'm in Kingston. My affiliation is with the U of T, University of Toronto. But my postdoc, it's a postdoctoral fellowship. It's not strictly with, it doesn't require residency. So I live in Kingston because I moved here from New Brunswick, which is in the Maritimes, just north of Maine, about 10 years ago, to study my PhD. And, I met my wife here. We have a child. So we decided to stay here, and she has a job in Kingston. So I mostly work from home. So, but I am basically here. Which is, Kingston is like 2 hours away from Toronto, sort of in between Toronto and Montreal. Really close, like for those in northern New York, it's close to Watertown. I don't know how you say it. Watertown? I don't know. It's close to there. It's like an hour away at most, maybe less. Like on Lake Ontario. Yeah, I mean, the Yang thing with the Patriot Act was hard to watch when it was like, do you guys know who this is? And everyone knew who Hassan was, but a lot didn't know who Yang was. For those who aren't Canadian, I don't know if you guys saw that, but his interview with Justin Trudeau is phenomenal. How you could see the anger in Trudeau. That was great to see. Yeah, I mean, Ilhan Omar doesn't get as much coverage. Like AOC gets the most coverage of the squad, and I guess it makes sense. Her story was so big, how she defeated Joe Crowley. She's the youngest of the group. She was the youngest female congressperson ever elected, so that's a big story. And she's the most left wing of the squad. She's the most left leaning of the squad, and she's the closest to Bernie. Like, again, Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib endorsed Bernie. Ayanna Pressley, also a member of the squad, endorsed Warren. But AOC is like in tight with Bernie. Honestly, I feel like if he could, he might pick her to be his VP. But she's too young. She's too young. She's like literally like, you got to be 35 to be president. And I don't think you can be picked as VP if you're not able to serve as president. Bernie raised 1.7 from 100,000 donations today. That's fantastic to see. That's fantastic. That's a big day. I know a lot of people were saying, let's money bomb Bernie to show solidarity in light of Warren's attacks, but I didn't know if it would happen. Haircut is looking good. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I used to have my hair longer. If you watch some of my older videos, I had really long hair. Trying to get a haircut every month or two now. Keep it relatively short. I might grow it out again one day, but for now, I got my haircut short. Jake Sisko, what is my favorite kaiju? Oh, I don't know. Whew. I have to think about that one. Jake, I have to think about that one. Maybe ask me tomorrow. Maybe I'll have thought about it again on my next stream. More than 15K raised from the first hour of the debate for Bernie. Wow. It's really good. Jared, look, I would die if I did the Justin Trudeau game. I don't know. I don't know if you saw David and I, Dole and I from the Rational National, we did a coverage of the UK election. We both had a drink after seeing those results, but we do just one. Yeah, look, I mean, I'm an NDP guy. You guys know that. I've played roles in the party. I'm a member of my riding association. I'm the vice president of my riding association. So I'm an NDP guy. But look, Bernie Sanders has shown you can raise money, and it has sort of shown that maybe Canadians, Canadian working class people need to be a bit more generous with the NDP. Maybe that's part of it. But I think a big factor is the NDP needs to step its game up. If Bernie can do it, we can at least do something like him. I know the U.S. culture is different. I know it's a bigger country. But Bernie's just one guy running a leadership campaign, effectively. If he can raise all this money, then we can do better. We can do better. Vladimir, so what did Biden say of note? Nothing really. Nothing really. Biden early on, I didn't note this, but Biden's argument for Iraq was basically yeah, I voted for Iraq, but then I brought those guys back. And then he was like, Barack Obama opposed the war, and he picked me to be vice president. As if to say, because a guy who opposed the war wanted you to be his vice president, you're excused for the war. I don't know. It looked like Twitter was not impressed with that answer, but I don't know how the general public took it. I want to make sure I missed a super chat. Did I miss one? I'll see it. Well, I'll see it when we come along. Warren got burned. Yeah, I think so. But you didn't need to. Bernie Sanders would have never attacked Elizabeth Warren, whether we wanted him to or not. He just would not have done it. And he didn't even attack her tonight. All he did was tell his side of that story. Oh, none of your business. Thanks. Yeah, name's Christo Avalis. Christo, it's pretty simple. It's like Chris with a toe. It's like Christopher, but without the fur part. And Avalis, it's you basically the I is silent, so it's like Avalis. So it's not too hard actually once you go with it. It's not a tongue twister like some Greek names, like Panagiotakis or something, like a 7-syllable last name that some of the Greek ones are. Yeah, Adam, that's a good point. So Adam right here says it seemed like Warren snubbed the handshake. Bernie looked to say, hey, you came after me, put his hands up and walked away, looked a little angry / depressed about it. That's not a bad take. I've just watched it while I'm on stream here. So I have to read about it a little bit more and take a look after this stream. But that does seem to me to be what happened. That looks like it. Yeah, Valdre, that's another thing too. I post all my streams on social media, so if you see them on my Twitter feed, you'll see them there too. I mean, Biden didn't really get attacked tonight, and the moderators didn't really give him any tough questions. Not that I could tell. For instance, again, as we noted, no questions on his remarks about cutting Social Security. A bit of questions about his support for the Iraq War, but I mean, not in a very pointed manner. Yeah, Jay Califf, the Boston Bomber, should be allowed to vote. Should be. Yep. Give him the right to vote. American citizen. 100%. I don't care how bad they are. I don't care. All citizens should have the right to vote. I mean, as far as I can tell, I'm just scrolling through. Unless somebody's spamming or like using slurs, then like I don't always block people. I try not to. But so I haven't seen anything objectionable enough from Jay Calf to be blocked yet, even though I have seen them be wrong a few times. If I'm, but would the freedom dividends increasing inflation? I mean, I don't know, maybe. I have seen one of the arguments being landlords will just raise their rent to eat into that. And that's probably the case, but I'm not always so sure. One of the arguments is that don't raise minimum wages, because if you raise the minimum wage, it'll just eat into the prices will go up and it won't matter. But that's not really true, is it? Because the prices rise without minimum wages rising, and that means that minimum wage workers effectively go below minimum wage. Because their wages are at the minimum, their costs keep going up, they're effectively losing purchasing power. And, the minimum wage here in Ontario went up quite substantially last year, in 2018. And they went up quite a bit from like 11 or 12 something to like $14. And they were supposed to go to 15, but Doug Ford won, unfortunately. And costs didn't rise by the same extent wages did in that case, right? They didn't. Costs did rise in some places. I'm sure that if an economist sat down, they could probably say this minimum wage increase led to an increase in costs, but not so much that it left the poorest people with less money or something. So yeah, it might increase inflation, but that's not the argument I would make against the freedom dividend. Not the principal one, at least. That argument's often used as a cynical ploy because at the end of the day, prices are rising no matter what. And it's at the very least, let's let workers' wages be the thing that causes inflation for once, if it does. So that's my view. It's not left versus right, it's top versus bottom. Yeah, but I mean, the disproportionately those at the top are on the right. Disproportionately, the left is fighting for those at the bottom. It's like, I've heard that argument from libertarians. It's like, don't get caught in the left-right dichotomy. But it's like, the left, which I define as people fighting for economic, social, and political democracy, are not the top. Right? Like, that's my view. Like, certainly, you could make the argument that on certain issues, I get it, it's like there's like the Hollywood elite. Billionaires and millionaires that support left-wing culture politics, but they're not at the top. But at the end of the day, like, it's Bernie Sanders who is the most left-wing politician to run for president since Eugene Debs, and he's fighting clearly for the bottom. Oh yeah, Stephen Colbert Cheese says, what do you think about the Bernie thing where he was lying, like treated like a fact? Yeah, we talked about that, Stephen, a couple times. Basically, I thought it was BS. It was one of the worst things of the night, where they basically accused Bernie of this. Bernie gave his response, and then they moved on as if Bernie said nothing at all. Yeah, awful. Awful stuff. Yeah, Alan, there's issues with streaming, right? They do it in Europe in some countries, and it's not always as bad as that, but, there are issues with streaming. Yeah, flying ostriches, I hope you're right. I hope you're right that Bernie and Warren have had a good relationship. And early on in this primary process, and I've talked about this, everyone thought they were going to attack one another because, one of them was going to try to eat the other's progressive support, and that they were going to tear at each other for it. But they didn't. And because they didn't, they both did well. And that's the reason why Beto O'Rourke is gone, Kamala Harris is gone, Cory Booker's gone, and two of the three candidates left are Warren, I think with a chance to win, because I don't think Buttigieg really does, are Warren, Sanders, and Biden, because they stuck together early on. And again, Bernie was never going to attack Warren. He was going to offer criticisms about Warren, but he was never going to attack her in the way she attacked him, ever. Ever. He would have lost before it. And maybe that would have been the wrong thing to do. Maybe he was too nice to Warren. But at the end of the day, like, he was loyal to her. Loyal sub, I'm going to run for office. I don't know. As I've noted on this channel, I've not seriously thought about running for office, but I've thought about thinking about running for office. That's my approach. I might one day. Not right now, though. Adam B. Hey, TBO, the agenda having a debate tomorrow. Should billionaires exist? That's interesting. I saw the episode they had where they had a discussion with the person who wrote a book on the why billionaires are bad. I've been on the TBO, actually, TBO's agenda. Just the episode before the 2018 Ontario election. I did that episode. I was the NDP guy on that. It's a good show. It's a fun show to do. It's the only show I've done, actually, where they put makeup on me. Because, it's like most of the recordings I've done are pretty informal, but that one they actually do the whole studio. You put the makeup on and everything. Yeah. Do I like steamed hams? Indeed, I do. Especially the ones from Northern New York, the best ones. AOC Omar 2020. 2028, yeah, maybe. Omar can't, though, because Omar was, this is BS, I think, but Omar's not born in the United States. Can't be president. Stupid rule. I think that's a stupid rule. In Canada, our prime ministers can be foreign born. In fact, 3 of our 6 first prime ministers were foreign born, and we've had a foreign born prime minister as recently as 1984. Yeah, Jay Califf, yeah, Barack Obama endorsing Justin Trudeau was awful. A lot of people on this, a lot of people assume that because I am a leftist that I support Trudeau. But if you actually take the work to go through my videos, there's maybe no one I've criticized more on this channel than Justin Trudeau. And so a lot of conservatives will say, oh, you're a leftist, you must love Trudeau. And a lot of liberals will say, well, you don't like Trudeau, you must like Andrew Scheer or Donald Trump or a conservative. And I say, well, what if I hate both? Like, I don't like neoliberals in the Democratic Party or the Republican Party or in the Liberal Party or the Conservative Party. And so a lot of people will assume that it's like, oh, you defend Justin Trudeau painting his face. When it's like, I get no fewer than 3 videos criticizing that, saying it should have ended Justin Trudeau, right? So people assume that I'm a Trudeau defender. In no way am I. Comrade Internet, he might be. Justin Trudeau never said that he did it less 3 times total, and he never told us the last time he did it. All My Lettuce. Sorry I missed this super chat, All My Lettuce. I really apologize. For whatever reason, it didn't pop up on my thing. So they wants to know what's happening out west. Wetsu, I don't know how to pronounce that. I should know. But basically what's happening out west, I'd rather just not pronounce it than mispronounce it. But there's an indigenous community out west, which is in the path of a liquid natural gas pipeline. The RCMP, basically Canada's federal police, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, called the Mounties often, are basically forcing through the pipeline. And this is being done with both the Justin Trudeau government support and, very unfortunately, the provincial NDP government support. I think it's a mistake. The NDP government there has tried to say that they respect Indigenous rights, and this is not a respect of Indigenous rights, in my view. I think they're making a mistake here. I don't know if it'll hurt them politically. I'm not on the ground. There are people who can give a better perspective, both from the fact that they have a proximity to the story, but also that they understand the specific community political issues here. But yeah, It's a serious issue. It's a serious issue. Yeah, no, Sean, you're right. Jugmeat ran a fantastic campaign. They showed like how he ran like the most successful campaign in terms of raising one's personal approval rating in like modern Canadian history. But you're right that the next step is to build that team, to get Matthew Green, Leah Gazan, Mumila Kakak, and all of these, the new MPs and everybody else, to get them media attention, to give a sense that it's like that the NDP has built a team of people. Craig, I did see that. I did see the Bernie Sanders handshaking thing. I have not seen enough of it to give my 100% take. Adam B. above basically said it looked like Warren was coming at him, like criticizing him, and then Bernie said, hey, wait, you started this. And then Bernie sort of walked away kind of sad looking, and Tom Steyer was just there kind of watching it all with like a cringy face. That's what I saw. I don't know enough yet. I did briefly listen to the clip here on the stream, but like I don't think the mics were on. All I heard was Anderson Cooper, right? So I didn't get anything there. Jared says, good night, thanks so much for that. I'll probably be finishing up in a little bit. I'm trying to get through some questions here. Homeless people can't vote. In the United States, homeless people can't vote. I know in Canada, look, everyone can vote. There are certain limitations. One of the limitations is you have to be able to show your address. But here in Canada, it should be remembered that even if you can't prove your address, you can get someone to basically declare they know you, and you should be able to vote. The U.S. is more restrictive. In Canada, you don't need an ID. You often use mail. If you get, say, a letter, a utility bill with your name on it and your address on it, that's usually enough information to vote. And if you're homeless, you might not get mail, but maybe you get mail at a homeless shelter or at a shelter where you frequent. That could be good enough, right? It just proves you're in the district. Homeless people can vote in Canada. Ken Jennings just trolled Bloomberg. Yeah, that was interesting. Earlier tonight, people weren't sure if Bloomberg's 2020 account was hacked or not, because it was posting some really weird stuff, but apparently it wasn't hacked. No, I mean, you're right, Sean. You're right. Jugmeat picked the two portfolios, Indigenous Affairs and Intergovernmental Affairs. And this is both, right? This is an Indigenous issue, and this is specifically how does the federal government relate to a province? In this case, BC. He needs to do more. And some MPs have been commenting on this. Former MP Romeo Saganash, the one who said Trudeau doesn't give an F about Indigenous people in Parliament. And friggin', that was fantastic. That was, 2 years ago now, probably? Has said something. Nikki Ashton has said something about it. He needs to say more, though. Jay Califf says, great chat room, thanks. Not a problem. Again, Jay Califf, we don't always agree on stuff, but I don't block people if they disagree, as long as they're respectful to me and to, well, even less to me, frankly, but to the rest of my viewers. Again, if you're throwing around slurs, hateful slurs, or if you're spamming and stuff, I'll boot you. But other than that, I like to have as many people here as we can. Yeah, Jake says, so the liberal conservative dichotomy. That's fair. That's a fair point. Like, when people say top bottoms, like, it is fair to say that, like, there's not, political spectrum isn't two-dimensional. Political spectrums are multidimensional. They change according to history. They change according to national and local and regional contexts. All very true. All very true. It's a good point. No, certainly. I have been, retweeting some of these things on social media. I'm certainly looking into it. The challenge with making a story on this is that it's such a contentious issue that I really don't want to make a mistake. And so I'm very wary. So I have a few people that I follow. One person who you might follow on Twitter, as his name is Sean Carlton. If you look him up, you should see him. He is a scholar that studies Indigenous issues. He has been following this story. You could look at him. Mexi is a YouTuber. She hasn't made a video about this. She doesn't do newsy videos. She does like a video a month type channel. But she's been tweeting a lot about it. So check out Mexi's Twitter account and see, and then follow, from these accounts, follow Indigenous people and profile them. They will give you far more context and information and insight than I could ever hope to do on that kind of story. You know, Alan, you're right. Jugmeat basically criticized Trudeau on the issue, which was the right thing to do. But, you know, John Horgan, it plays a role here. John Horgan is playing a role here. See, technically, the federal government has more power here, because the RCMP is federal police. But at the end of the day, John Horgan isn't doing anything to stop this, and indeed is sort of saying that this is going to happen. Yeah, Alan says call your MP, especially if you have a Liberal MP, but not just that. Call your MPs. If you have a government MP, let them know. If you have a opposition MP, let them know that this is something you want the Trudeau government challenged on. If you're from BC, not only call your MP, but call your member of the legislature. Let them know that this issue matters to you and that Indigenous rights are important. Yeah, Valhob, you're right. You're right. And look, I'm a Jugmeat guy, but I don't like the party's position is wrong here. I get it. I get there's economic benefits. I get that. I get that natural gas is less climate-cidal than tar sands. But at the end of the day, the project is bad for the environment. It's bad for Indigenous rights. And we need to be critical of it. Yeah, Jake says, Peter Kormos made me an affidavit to vote when I was in Welland. I didn't know that, Jake. That's really interesting. Peter Kormos was a great man. He's a great man. It's somewhat, in some ways, like a Bernie Sanders. In some ways, maybe you would agree with me or not. Sort of like a Bernie, but maybe a little bit more gruff than a Bernie even. But sort of like a Bernie. Yeah, walk reconciliation now includes heavily armed police. For those who don't know, Walking Eagle News is sort of like the Beaverton, which in turn is sort of like the Canadian Onion. You know, the Onion, the satirical news site. We have the Beaverton in Canada, which is sort of like a Canadian take. But then there's also Walking Eagle News, which is like an Indigenous The Onion, an Indigenous Beaverton, which does really good pieces. Yeah, Valdrade makes a good point. Romeo Saganash is a good person to follow. He's a former MP for the NDP, an Indigenous person from northern Quebec, but he's spoken on Indigenous issues all across the country, and he's been critical of this decision. I don't know if Leah Gazana said anything. Leah Gazana has been outspoken. I know Nikki Ashton has said something. Nikki Ashton was a leadership candidate. It's Niki and then Ashton, AAS, like Ashton. You follow her. She's been critical of this too. And those are, again, Nikki is a current NDP MP. So guys, we're in about 2 hours. If you have any last questions you want to ask, let me know. It's pushing 1 a.m. here, 1:15. So I should be getting to bed a little bit soon. So let me know what you think. Before you guys go, I haven't been streaming as much lately because I've been busy with all this stuff happening in the news. But if you like my streaming, I do a stream here on YouTube every Wednesday night. Right? Every Wednesday night, I do a stream at 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock Eastern. We talk about what's going on that week. I take your questions. I take your comments. We have a great time. Often my wife Brianna helps co-host the stream to help facilitate the discussion, which is really good. It lets us get to more comments and questions than I can on my own, because my attention has to be divided between answering them and finding them. But I also stream on Twitch. So I'll link my Twitch. If you want to follow me on Twitch, you can. Let me get my Twitch here. I am there every once in a while. I do want to start streaming on Twitch more, but I haven't really gotten into that as much yet. So and other than that, if you're new here, click the like button. Click on the thing. Click the subscribe button. Click the bell. If you liked what I talked about tonight, you'll certainly like a lot of my videos. This is basically my unfiltered perspective. The videos give a similar perspective with a bit more editing. Some of the issues we've talked about tonight are I've made videos about. So we've talked about the Warren Bernie spat. I made videos about that last night and today. Bernie surge in polling. I've made videos. Bernie, the way the media lies about Bernie Sanders. I've made a piece about how NBC has lied about Bernie and how the Washington Post has lied about Bernie. So I encourage you after the stream to check out the videos. If you think there's other people who might like this sort of content, let them know because it's really interesting. And finally, I have a Patreon. It should be linked in the description, but I'll also grab it here. One thing to note with my Patreon is there are, patron goals. Every patron gets to be in my end credits, which I post at the end of all my edited videos. People at the $10 level get invited to my private Slack channel. If you donate $25, I send you, you get to suggest a video topic to me, and I'll do it within reason. And then $50, I'll send you a copy of my book for free, which retails at about $35. And then that's it. But also, when I hit $500 on Patreon, I'm going to be doing more interviews on this channel. If you look at Michael Brooks, he does these really great interviews, and I've done a few on this channel, but I want to do more. I want to do more interviews on this channel. I want to interview politicians, other YouTubers, activists, academics, interesting people. But I want to look at getting some good interview software to maybe facilitate that. And so your support might help to make that happen. So guys, I really appreciate you coming. Thanks for all the new people, and I will see you guys tomorrow. And thanks, guys.